Hey, Feel Good Fathers. I'm so excited today to introduce to you my buddy, Mickey. We just spent a couple of days together learning and working on his brand, and he is an expert in modern masculinity, but that is not necessarily what we're going to talk about today. He's also founded, oh goodness, there's so much here. Founded the Mindset Map process. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a former corporate leader. He regularly blogs for Psychology Today and Forbes, and he is a proud father of two who are just about to leave the empty nest. Just as we were off air, we were kind of queuing up. How could I introduce all this kind of stuff? And then I was like, you know what? Let's just have Mickey here introduce what is this mindset map element, and then we'll get into the discussion about modern masculinity and fatherhood.
Great. Love it, Jay. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. And so for some reason, I just look back and I see this book. I don't know how it got there, but anyway, we've written a book titled The Power of Mindset Change. In short, because I was fascinated with mindset ever since I was a kid and the wonders, the effects it can have on somebody's life. And also how often people are just on autopilot and unaware of their own mindset. So we created a framework with my partner that illuminates this whole topic and, puts a process there, puts a map there where you can look at your mindset. You can kind of think about what's important to you in your life right now, and then kind of look at what our research suggests in terms of the right mindset for your goal and what is your current mindset. So we have, as we said, we have written a book about it. We have a 7-step process for mindset change, and we have a certification program. So anybody who's interested in that can check this out on mindsetmapsinternational.com. So that's our homepage.
Awesome. So in addition, and this really aligns with sort of the work I do with personal branding, is that really it's for the ideal person to engage with this is a purpose-driven leader. Give me some details here.
Yeah. So we help purpose-driven leaders who are at a crossroads. So, you're at a crossroads, which way I go, which way leads up, what's my next level in my life. And, maybe you feel like some things have been holding you back. You've climbed a mountain, you've achieved something, maybe you made a little bit of money and you're kind of secure, but you're like, is this all there is for me? What's my next mountain? And that's where, our process and the mindset maps comes in. It helps you to kind of really get clear on what is that direction, what is that focus, what is that next mountain you want to climb.
This really sounds like what a lot of feel-good fathers go through when they basically become a father for the first time, that there's this whole re-engineering of priorities and purpose. And so much of it is unconscious and so much of it is done solo. Would you agree that I'm not calling fatherhood in crisis, because that's sort of like the catch line that we just discussed here with these purpose-driven leaders, but it certainly is a pivot point for fathers. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. I actually have a fairly strong statement to make about that. So, the way I think about fatherhood is kind of, it's like, it's a triangle. So you used to be, it used to be just 2 points connected, you and your partner. And now you became a father. And basically what you had dies. So the dyad, the two of you is over. Now it's the three of you. So it becomes into this triangle, the father, the mother and the child, whichever way you think about those roles and gender, but it becomes a triangle now, and something is born on the day, the dyad, the relationship dies in its old form, something new is born, and now you have to live with that, and it's amazing, it's beautiful, but there's something pretty scary for a lot of fathers about, I have this intimate relationship, and now this thing came in, and it's taking so much energy from my partner, from my life, from my wife. How do I deal with that? So I think embracing the triangle is a big one. It makes a big mindset shift and paradigm shift.
What are going to be sort of the core blockers, the core challenges of a father that is confronted with this transformation from the dyad to the triangle to the introduction of this new person in the relationship, your kids? What's going to be sort of the top couple of challenges that they're going to face in adopting this new mind shift and adopting this perspective on their family?
So what I have found is that most men live their life as kind of a man child. So they never actually grow up. and and what that means is, so it shows up in little small things, like you try to schedule a meeting with a man friend, right? And they're going to say to you, no, that's above my pay grade. You got to talk to my wife. So, that kind of gives you an idea. Okay, in this person's mind, social connections, friendships is something that's been delegated to someone. And, they think that they're delegated to, I don't know, make money. And so they say it's above my pay grade, but they may be actually implying that it's below their pay grade. And so men love being served, right? Like for these kinds of things, like emotional stuff, social stuff, that I don't deal with that. I just attend. And so if you kind of live your life that way, I think when your baby is born, you wake up, shit, I'm an adult. I now have to, I don't have the full attention of my partner anymore, of my wife anymore. I actually have to attend to someone else's attention. And that baby is, not able to express things in words yet. So I'm going to have to, kind of be in a different modality. I have to respond to sounds, and I have to touch, and I used to express, if at all, my emotions with words, but with this little thing, it doesn't work. So I think the challenge is to kind of, oops, I need to grow up. Oops, I need to serve. Oops, I don't have all the attention. And what is my role in here? Because initially it seems like very much like, the mother and the baby is one. Like a lot of people don't know that psychologically the baby thinks that they are, that the mother and them, it's one unified thing. It's one whole. So it takes them a while to even realize that they're separate. So it's not easy to watch that.
Let's take a minute there, because I think that's a really great educational point, that the baby and the baby doesn't have a sense of boundaries. It's roughly the first couple of years. So it's not until we're actually, my youngest right now is about 18 months at the time of this recording. And she's developing that concept of there are other people. There's like, I'm not just a part of mom, that mom is a separate entity that has her own boundaries, and that she's developing her boundaries. And that's actually very healthy and normal. You're saying a lot of elements here for the father in particular that sound a lot like a responsibility, that there's a delegation of emotion and connection. Where do you think that comes from? Because that definitely is a mindset. That definitely is a perspective. What causes that kind of interaction or that kind of perspective before kids, like when it's just husband and wife or guy friend, girlfriend, or whatever, however it works?
Yeah. I think it's the kind of the man's box. It's basically the traditional concept of what men need to be. So I remember, I grew up, my father never went near the kitchen except to eat, right? But not to make something there. He never went, like near the laundry, that was delegated to my mother, who was, by the way, a psychology professor. So she wasn't exactly supposed to be the stay-at-home mom taking care of everything. So, like certain roles certain things were just not man's things. So when you grow up like that, you think, okay, that's how it should be. That's how it's going to be. So in many relationships, I think the roots go back to something that you saw at home, and that's how it was. So that's how it's got to be.
This sounds a lot like the Leave It to Beaver area, because I
Mm,
try and when I'm constructing and discussing with other guests and just other fathers in general, what what is this modern masculinity? What is it? It seems to me that there's a decent push culturally from men and fathers to go back to this pre-industrial era of what it meant to be. What is that man? What's that role that you have in society? Because when I think back to agrarian, like the agrarian world, it's like I don't really see the farmer that's got his land, it's cultivating the land, it's raising the kids and doing that kind of stuff. I don't really see him deciding to ask his wife to bring the cart into town to sell the wares, right? I don't see, if we're thinking about the old
yeah,
warrior tribes, I'm thinking about the hunter gatherer tribes. I don't really see him saying, do I have your permission to go out with the boys to go hunt? Like I don't see that.
true.
And so there was definitely some sort of moment where this became the acceptable behavior. And I'm deeply curious about what you think about how this came to be, and what's an alternative to it.
Right. Yeah. The how this came to be, I don't know if I consider myself an expert in terms of that, and or if I have done enough research to answer the question. Although it's a fascinating question, I think city living, so living in cities, in big
Mm.
cities, and bigger communities. That was certainly one big reason for that to start taking shape. I think it may have to do a little bit with religion and popular culture. So you watch movies, and that's what you see in the movies. So you kind of really get this under your skin just as you grow up. I am very focused on looking forward in terms of my research. Even though it's funny, because in research you have to understand what works, so you got to
Right.
look back a little bit, but then the focus is, okay, so what's the way forward from here. And I think the way forward is to, because you're asking me, what are the challenges that fathers are facing, and I remember thinking as you were asking me, well, it's actually, it would be lovely to say these are the three challenges, and I was trying to kind of give you something like that. But it's also interesting that the real truth is that for every father, for every man, it's actually a little different.
Yes.
So to me, the way forward is the idea of um, putting it in these words. Own your shit. So figure out what is your problem, because you can have the first 50 years of your life to be about the past, and you can say, oh, it's my mother and it's my father, and they didn't love me, and I lived in this place and there was nothing there and there were no friends. So you can blame it, but after the second half, after the second mount, after the climbing the first mountain, you got to start taking ownership. You got to start becoming responsible for your life. And by the way, the number one thing in which we teach in or I teach in the mindset mastery process is be in charge of your own state.
Mm.
So it's not your wife that is supposed to put you in a good state. It's not your kids that are like, oh, sorry, Johnny put me in a really bad mood, so I reacted this way. That's not really ownership, right? Like, the ownership starts with, okay, so how can I be my best, and do I have a practice to put myself in a good mental, physical state every day? Do I own that? Because if I don't, you know you're missing the foundations. So that's kind of step one for me for a way forward.
I love this concept because I think when it comes to responsibility and ownership, that's certainly the feel good father way. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think that there's another angle here that we're discussing, which is what is the, and literally how do you approach this situation at home? How are you approaching your financial life? How are you approaching sort of your relationship with your kids? And this is all compounded in at this moment you're in crisis, the relationship is changing, the world is upending for everybody involved, right? Mom's life and body and emotional state and attention has completely adjusted. Dad's life and less so his body, but his attention, his emotional state, his psychology, what he's thinking about has completely changed. There's this concept of or at least the idea that I'm thinking about it, of how the father looks at the unit, right? What I thought
Yeah.
was really interesting, and this is backed actually by psychology. I learned this from Dr. Steve Williams, great resource for psychology and studies. If you're open to learning and different perspectives, if you're not and you're stuck in your ways, don't bother. But if you're open to seeing what he studies, and the core concept here and the idea was that um, dads tend to think of the whole unit as
Mm-hmm.
one big unit. So if things aren't good with mom, it's going to be rougher for him to have a great relationship with kid. If things aren't good with kid, it's going to be rougher for him to have a great relationship with mom. And so he's looking for peace. He's looking for calm. He's looking for the great relationship, the love and the and affection and the service as the whole unit. Contrast this, these are typical, right? Contrast this with mom. Mom tends to run the family as she's the center of the spoke and she has a relationship with each individual unit. And so she can have a great relationship with dad, but also, be struggling with baby or struggling with son or daughter or whatever happens to, however it happens to work, and vice versa. She can have a great relationship with kids and then be struggling with him, with dad. So what's the second layer? We talked about ownership, responsibility. What's the
Yeah.
second layer that dads can really kind of engage with a more positive mindset at home?
So there were two things that I was reminded of as you said what you said. So one is uh, if you don't have a relationship okay here, so that's kind of like your parents. So if something is not okay here, it's hard to be okay here.
And for those who are listening,
Yeah.
Mickey was just pointing up, so up in the tree to the parents, and then he was pointing forward in the second half, which is your current, like your immediate family. So that would be wife, mom, and kids. So continue.
Ex- exactly. Thanks for helping me out. And that's really so. The point being that ownership also means that I gotta solve. If I feel like there's a big issue here that, and I'm pointing upward again, I want to work through that somehow. And sometimes, your parents passed away, or it's impossible to have that conversation. But I would suggest that you could go to like a family systems therapy. But so I think people need to work through those big issues. Otherwise, you spend your whole life, my father didn't love me, didn't give me enough positive feedback when I was, in my teenager years. So I need attention for the rest of my life to make up for it. And you cannot, it's not fair to live your life like that, because you're going to put expectations on other people that they cannot deliver. You're going to have this hole in you that you can never feel. So I believe that, that's very important to kind of work through that in therapy. And I would suggest that all of us should do it at one point if we feel like there's a baggage there. And then, the next thing is, okay, so how can I be at my best as a father, is to kind of look at marriage as, or a long-term relationship as, okay, so we got two independent people, two independent units here that decided to make a life together, right? So we're going to have to talk about big picture questions, like, what is important to you?
Hmm.
What is important to me? And I have been in this relationship with my wife for 32 years. So it's a fairly long relationships, and we love each
Congratulations.
other. Thank you. And, we love each other, and it's amazing. And I think we are doing this kind of big picture clarity recontract. It's like a contract. Like, we have to agree on certain things. So instead of kind of like going into life and like, let's see what happens, the question is, okay, so what's important for me, what's important for you, what's important for us, and let's make some priorities. And so you got to agree on that. Like, you might say, well, financial stability is extremely important, so that's going to be one of our key goals. But then spirituality is very important, or maybe to one of you spirituality is very important, and then you need something from the other. But being very clear on what are the bigger chunk goals for us, what are my priorities, and how do we work to support each other to achieve that. I think that's the other big foundational piece that seems to be often missing.
This reminds me a lot of the sort of the family boardroom meeting.
Yeah.
Every once a month or so,
Right.
you're checking in, finding out what is it you want to do, what's going on. And this is beyond the regular upkeep. This is sort of a future planning. And I think that one of the things that's very consistent here that I'm hearing is that there's an element of eliminating or overcoming the circumstances and the blame. That's like step one. And then there's a handful of tools there. You mentioned family systems therapy. There's some other elements there. Then there's the next step is like, okay, acknowledging that those things happened in the past. Now there's the present, ownership and responsibility. And the third piece is making sure that you have something that you're moving towards, some sort of priority, some sort of perspective that you want to build together. That sounds absolutely amazing. That sounds like a really functional, healthy individual that's bringing their best. So the Feel Good Father would bring his best, kind of having these discussions and bringing all these concepts to the table. The other half, I think, to this whole conversation is we've been kind of talking a little bit about modern masculinity. I want to dip our toes in here, but you've also been successfully run a lot of men's groups. And I'd love to hear about your perspective on what is sort of the state of this masculinity? What is the state of these modern discussions? Because some Feel Good fathers out there are going to have sons, and we're going to want to, be able to model and have those conversations about what that looks like. Then on the other side, it's like some of us are going to have daughters, and they're going to want to see the best versions of us, because typically we're the first love as the father. We're the first love of our daughters. And so we want to be able to model super good behavior. And of course, there's other permutations. We're just not going to get into that here. So let's talk about men's groups and modern masculinity.
Love the question. Yeah. So, if we kind of come out just for a moment to take a big picture view of the process. So in my mind, it's being in charge of my own state, number one. Then, achieving this kind of big picture clarity and having those boardroom discussions, and then becoming pretty clear on where we are going and where I am going as a human being. And then what you need is habits, because the thing is, you can have these like big aha moments and big conversations, and you have it out with your wife or with your friend, but what will happen afterwards is the big question. And nothing will happen afterwards unless you have certain habits. So, we have identified a number of very important habits, and one relates to feedback and constantly seeking high quality feedback from trusted, loving sources, which kind of leads to this idea of men's group. So I happen to believe that all of us should be in a men's group in a way. And some of us are very spontaneous about it, and we are able to construct it through, a group of friends. But what I noticed is, even with your best friends. So here is how I started the first men's group. So we have this group of friends that we go to holidays with for, I don't know, 15 years. Every summer, 5 families go on this summer holiday, but we don't see each other during the year because we live elsewhere in different states, countries. And so we would then meet for this 1 week of, supposedly amazing time where it's going to be like really deep. And we noticed that although it was fun, sometimes it was better than other times. And that was kind of very connected to the depth of conversations. Did I hear from Jay what's going on in his life, or, Jay was kind of quiet. So I, he didn't get to say. And then he would kind of feel like, you don't care about me. And others would feel bad about, why didn't Jay speak up? But we don't know, right? So we notice that if we leave it just up to us, we might go there, we might have those amazing connections and feel really recharged, or we might not. And that's what I notice about all the men that I talk to, is that, okay, they may have some friends, but they don't have time. They're constantly busy. The little time they have, they want to spend with their family. They want to be there. They want to be good fathers. They want to be at the games, pick the kids up, But when is the time when you can be just you with a group of guys that are really supportive, where, you can ask tough questions? And, friends, again, the tricky thing about friends is they want something from you because, we are friends. So I'd like you to do this because I think you should do this. So in a men's group, it's an environment where, it's regulated. Everybody has to speak and can speak. And it's all confidential. There's no pillow talk. The wives are not going to discuss what I said to you tonight. So it's an amazing way of ensuring that I can show up, I can get challenged, I can get some supportive feedback. And if it's men only, it's just special because we're all in the same boat, so we can share something which we wouldn't normally do. We used to do this, I think, around the fire. Probably the hunters would do this around the fire. We don't do it anymore.
So I love this because one of, I think, the biggest transformations in my life for the past, this is now my 3rd year in this particular aspect, I've been participating in a mastermind. And so this is like when you're talking about this men's group, I've been participating in a mastermind, and it's had tremendous benefit to me, just in my personal growth and my ability to share in. The great thing about this group is that they don't want, the reciprocity is different. It's not as you were describing, I'm doing this, I would like you to do this. It's we're coming together, and in that space that's created, the only expectation is just honesty. The only expectation is that everybody there is there to support, is the word. But the other way to say it is that they have no vested interest in my performance. They have no vested interest in my capacity and in my performance, in anything that's going on. All that means is that they just 100% want to support and help me succeed in whatever is going on. But they get no payment from it, no nothing like that. And so, shameless plug here, right? The Feel Good Fatherhood Mastermind, right? If you're listening to this, it's up and running. You can go to feelgoodfatherhood.com to find out some more information about it, to get involved in a group where you can do that. It has tremendous benefits. I would also suggest, I'll link down below another discussion about men's groups and friendships. So the example you're describing was that you were meeting infrequently, once a year, with these groups, and there was this challenge of sharing based on emotional, intellectual state, physical state, that kind of jazz. What was the solution that you implemented to fix that with your friends group?
Right. So yeah, that was just kind of a historical segue in terms of how I realized that a more structured way of communication, a facilitated way of communication, can change the problem, because our problem was we never got there, and it was very unequal. Like some people spoke, others didn't. So what we have done there is we've said, okay, so we're going to have these check-in circles where everybody speaks for a given amount of time. It's 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And it's kind of, we call it the body mind soul check-in.
Mm.
How is my body, how is my mind, how is my soul? And I share a little bit about that. And that creates an amazing connection and an amazing level of depth that otherwise isn't there, and it ensures that everybody speaks up. So, and then you can decide at the end of this circle that maybe somebody shared something that needs more attention. And so the men's groups that I built were always based on this idea that instead of getting together and freely chatting about the topics that we like to chat about, there is this honest check-in, to your point about being honest and showing up. And then we build from there and identify places where people might need some support.
I I would love to hear an example of what does a body, mind, and soul check-in look like. And this is for the Feel Good Fathers. They're hanging out. For many of them, it's going to be a completely new concept. What kind of goes into these? Like, if I'm checking into my body, if I'm checking in my mind, if I'm checking in my soul, what would I say? What does that look like?
Right. So, for the body, so that's one of the kind of harder things to do, for both men and women, but men in particular, because we're kind of talking heads, like we're in our head. So the body part is just get into your body. So as you're listening to us, to this podcast, just notice how you are sitting. And notice your body posture, notice your spine. Is it straight? Is it not? Notice your chin, notice your shoulders, kind of do a little bit of body scan. And what do you feel? What do you feel in your body? And when you go into your body, you can feel, for example, I would talk about, if I'm doing the body mind soul check-in, I would talk about, I run a lot. And so I can feel a little bit of like a lower back stiffness. And, I'm 51 and I'm feeling certain things in my body that I never felt before. And I'm becoming aware of that. And it's hard because you think you're going to be forever young. You think you're exercising every day and just kind of dealing with that, no, there's these new things I've never felt before. And I got to work hard. So I'm grappling with that. So that would be my kind of body check-in.
Got it. So a scan, there's going to be, and it doesn't sound like this is a grievances element. I recently did a new workout routine and my body was just always sore as I was doing it. Or, there's a little bit of fatigue or there's a little bit of, hey, I'm noticing this thing. So it's kind of, it literally is just what's going on in my body. Do you discuss fitness? Do you discuss weight? Do you discuss,
Yeah. So the idea is that I may have a new best practice, that I started, and I want to share that with the group, and so others can hear about it. So sometimes it's like, what I didn't say, it's you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'm on a 7 today, and the reason is, or I'm on a 9 today, and the reason is. So we do the rating as well because it helps others to kind of grasp what's really going on for you. And then we go, to the next thing. What about your mind? What's on your mind? And I don't know if you want me to go through a real check-in, but it's kind of like going in the same fashion. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So, so then, you would go to your mind and share something about, maybe something, in my case, it's, I have two boys. One is 21 and the other is 19, and they are going to both go abroad to college, and they actually decided to go to the same city, and I'm incredibly excited for them. So there's this, I'm thinking about it all the time, but I'm also thinking about this all the time in terms of, how is it going to be, how is it going to work for them? Is it actually a good idea that they are going together? Because, as much as it's a great thing. So I'm ruminating a lot on this. So that could be some,
When you're sharing in this men's group, are you is it how you were talking a lot about the facilitation? What do you see creates a positive environment for these men, and what creates a more negative environment?
What we teach there is, instead of reacting like, yeah, I know this, or yeah, you should do this, or you shouldn't think that, or why are you ruminating about that? You should be thinking about the positives. So that's kind of our go-to place, as men,
Mm,
like, let me fix it for you. Right. And so that's why my podcast is called the mentor shift, because we need to turn into a mentor. And by the way, so instead of sizing each other up and maybe comparing, I'm listening to you, and basically I just need to be there for you and listen. That's what needs to happen. So instead of reacting, we kind of hold a listening space, and
mm,
then let people know, like, if you need more help. So if Mickey wants to talk about his rumination, he can say, and by the way, I'd love this to be the case study tonight. I want to talk about, how I'm handling this, because I can feel it's tough for me. So if there's an open invitation, then we would take this topic and deal with it later in a, again, facilitated format.
it I love it because it's a double opt-in. It's the sharer saying, "This is what I'm thinking about. I would love some help," and then the group saying, "Oh, that's fantastic that this is what you're thinking about. We'd love to help." So
Yeah.
that's super great. So let's talk about the soul. What's a soul check-in look like?
So the soul is kind of the trickiest part, because some funny friends, I don't even know if I have a soul. I have, one guy I particularly remember in this very dear men's group that I run. He always says that every time. But basically, soul has to do with anything that's bigger than you, and whatever your definition for that. So for some people, it's God and it's prayer. For some people, it's meditation. For some people, it's serving others in certain types of contexts. For some people, it's like just experiencing um, things when you're in nature and you're connecting to something greater. So how do you, in your life, how do you get out of you and connect to something greater?
Mm,
That's and where are you with that? And what are you, maybe you're reading a book and it's very spiritual and you want to share that. Maybe you've been meditating for 20 years, but you find your practice empty and you want to share this, because we go through these like ups and downs. Maybe you're religious, but you say, lately when I pray, I don't feel that God is there to listen, and it's hard. Maybe you want to share that, because the thing is, we always, what makes any pain hard is that I think I have it and I only have it, and something is wrong. Probably something is wrong with me. I'm not praying right. I'm not meditating right. I'm not, you know. So how do I fix me? And then just to hear that, oh, we all struggle with that. We all have these questions. That's healing. So healing is not taking a pill. Mental healing is being in an environment that doesn't want to make me live up to some ideal or some expectation. It's just love and support and listening and being there. So that milieu is the word, can actually heal 10 times better than an antidepressant. That's what I believe.
so I absolutely love this, and I have a slightly different way of expressing it. In that, I
Mm.
think for men in particular, because we're just going to stick with that topic, I think one of the number one causes of mental health issues in most men and fathers is isolation. It's just what I call, there's the mommy guilt, which is that stuff, which is society putting a lot of pressure on mom to perform and do all that kind of jazz. I think the other side, there's something called daddy shame, and that's
Yeah.
just he constantly feels like he's never measuring up, constantly feels like he's not doing enough, constantly feels like he's never spending enough time, constantly in this cycle of just shaming, and most of it is self-shaming. Most of it is that, and I think a lot of it comes from using the exact example that you described, is this concept of, I think I'm the only one in the world that's ever dealt with this. And I have a very concrete example. I was in my mastermind recently and I was like, oh, I'm dealing with this. My oldest is turning 12. She's going through some things. And I said, I was like, I'm kind of going through this is tough.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what was really fun about all the other fathers in the room? They were like, yeah, that happens then. Just stick with it. And so I was like, oh, this is normal in air quotes, right? This is absolutely normal behavior. This is absolutely what I should be expecting. And I think just setting that intention of just saying, oh, this is just life. This is just the present. This is just what we're going through right now. It just kind of deflated and just immediately cast a light on that shadow. And the shadow can't live where there's light and effort. The isolation part, the elimination of that isolation was the idea that somebody else has gone through it and everybody else knows, hey, you're going to end up on the other side. It's not that big a deal. I guess the other way to say it is it's not that big a deal. And I think a lot of things and a lot of modern context is, hey, it's actually not that big a deal what you're dealing with right now. It's something that you're gonna solve. There are legitimate crises, but this is actually just kind of par for the course.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this idea of, becoming a practitioner where, you have this big picture clarity, you have this focus in life where you want to get to. Then you have these habits, and those relate to a lot to feedback and recharging and persisting. And then you have every day, right? So every day you got to reset your priorities, which is kind of our, not necessarily reset but set, right? And be flexible with them. And so that's kind of our step 5. So it's almost like you need to become, I call it like a mindset practitioner. Like, mindset isn't something that should be happening to you. It's something that you should be in charge of. And this environment, when you come to a men's group, or when you come to our mindset maps groups, and you learn the practice, is this idea of the sharing and connecting with others. And I think it can be healing if it's, like both gender or all genders are present there. And it's especially healing if you can kind of look at your man side, and also with what's happening in the world, being a white man, I think there's an extra degree of shame historically built into our culture here, because we look back and all these horrible things happened. And by the way, in every single society, because I lived around the world, and I can say that without wanting to question anybody's feelings, in every single history, and maybe it's more spread out, maybe it's more recent, maybe it was a long time ago, that we all have to deal with a lot. Evil is there, but we don't have to feel ashamed of it. We have to become feeders of the right wolf, right? Like, not the evil wolf, but the good wolf.
Yes.
Every day. So, yeah.
Absolutely love that. Mickey, thank you so much. Such a really great insight into mindset in the modern cultural context, into groups and healthy men's groups and masculinity. Do you have a closing thought?
Closing thought. Yeah, let me think how I would end it. Maybe just to say, one of the favorite quotes that I have is, okay, if I act for myself only, who am I? So if I act for myself only, who am I? But who is going to act for me if not me? So I have to start acting for me. But if I only act for myself, who am I? And then the third question is, when if not now? So start becoming the best of you today. And it involves, acting for yourself, but then not just for yourself, but for others.
Absolutely love it. Mickey, everybody, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. It was great to be here.